I hope y'all are having a wonderful day, and um, we're going to jump right into the lesson this week. So last week we did a lesson from the New Testament. This week we're going to the Old Testament. We're actually going to the book of Samuel. We're going to be discussing David, the boy who became king. Um, some background before this, because we're in the book of First Samuel, chapter 24. Um, this was before David became king, but after David um, defeated Goliath. You know, um, after he did that, the current king of Israel, or the current king whose name was Saul, was not particularly happy with David and had him do a bunch of different things, including killing a bunch of Philistines and collecting their foreskins, which is a really one of the stranger stories in the Bible. But in this chapter, we're actually looking at David and Saul's tumultuous relationship. They were friends to begin with for a little bit, and then they became enemies, and then they became friends, and then it was a really weird relationship. And so this this week's lesson is on loving your enemy. And so as we go into the lesson, I want you to ask yourself this question. What person or type of person do you find difficult to love, and why? Right now, I'm finding it really difficult to love those people who, despite being told to stay at home, still go out for non-essential stuff. Um, you know, it's kind of difficult for me to love them because they're putting themselves at risk. And so Paul says that without love, our Christian lives amount to nothing. And Jesus said the world will know that he is risen by our love for one another. And, so we need to ask God to fill us with his love for himself and for others. It's difficult to love those who have hurt us deeply. Saul slandered and falsely accused David. He hated and feared him because God had anointed David to become king in Saul's place. In order to protect his power and position, Saul kept trying to kill David. In this chapter, we observe David's response. I'm actually reading out of the New International Version of the Bible, and it's, as I said, 1 Samuel, the entirety of chapter 24. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all of Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crag of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. Then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, My lord the king. When Saul looked at him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He said to Saul, Why do you listen when men say, David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See, there is nothing wrong in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. Against whom has the Lord, the King of Israel, come out? Who are you pursuing? A dead dog? A flea? May the Lord be our judge and decide between us. May he consider my cause and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand. When David finished saying this, Saul asked, Is that your voice, David, my son? And he wept aloud. You are more righteous than I, he said. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him go away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants, or wipe out my name from my father's family. So David gave his oath to Saul. Then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. So, what aspects of David's character are revealed in this passage? It's pretty simple. It's a major aspect of his character is his duty, his loyalty. You know, his loyalty to God. You know, God told David, "Do not, hurt the anointed of the Lord," and his friends were telling him to do it, but he didn't. And so, if you in the previous um, chapter for Samuel 23, we actually see just how big of a military um, might that Saul has over David. So David had 600 men. Saul had, let's see, Saul had 3,000 able young men. David had 600. That's a 1 to 5 ratio. And in spite of these, how does David suddenly have the opportunity to kill Saul? It's the opportunity he has is the fact that it turned into almost a one-on-one. It's, this cave has 300 or 600 men in it, so it must be a very large cave. And Saul is in there using the restroom, and David creeps up behind him and cuts off a piece of his cloak. He could have killed him, just like his men were expecting him to, because they said, I will, the Lord said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Their version of as you wish was, sorry guys, it was to kill him. And so the important question to ask right now is, if you were in David's position, if the guy who has been chasing you around, hunting you, trying to kill you, is now standing in a cave, completely exposed, because to use the restroom meant you had to take off your sword and stuff, and so he couldn't really defend himself. So he's completely exposed. If you were in that position with David, with your opponent, why might you have been tempted to follow the counsel of your men? So why do you think you personally would do what his men said instead of what God said? And so, in verse 5, David was conscience stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe, and so, because the Lord told him, "Hey, do not lay a hand on my anointed. Do not attack my anointed." And he didn't attack him, but he cut off a piece of his robe. So why do you think David would be conscience-stricken about doing something like that? And I think that it just simply has to do with the fact that God told him not to do something, but he did it anyways. And how can viewing our heart, our enemy, from God's perspective, enable us to have a change of heart like David's? If my enemy was chasing me around and trying to kill me, trying to hurt me, and God told me, don't do it. You don't kill him because it's not my plan to have you kill him. I would feel conflicted if I was put up right next to him. So there is a movie called Heat with Michael Mann. It's got Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in it. And De Niro is a bank robber, and Pacino is a police detective. And there's a scene in the movie where they are actually at a diner eating together. And, De Niro is Pacino's enemy, straight up. And De Niro can't do anything because he's been told by the cops, you have to wait for the opportune time. And this isn't the opportune time. And so that causes a little bit of a conscience-stricken thing on him. And so if we view our enemy from God's perspective, going as the sense that, this person might be afraid of you, and that's why they're harming you, or why they're trying to harm you, and all that. And so we can have a change of heart if we just remember that God told us that everybody should be loved. Yeah, you may not like your enemy, but God told us to love our enemies. And so that might cause our change of heart and change of perspective. And so in verses 8 through 15, which those are the ones in which David is talking to Saul about, all the stuff that he had done. How can a similar understanding help us to love others more freely? The Lord says in it, he is not, David says to Saul, I have not wronged you, but you're hunting me down. May the Lord judge between you and me. And may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. And so, what David is saying is that he's not in charge of the judgment, God is. And so, God, that sets him free to love his enemy, because eventually, at the very end, the Lord is going to be the judge, and he's going to decide who wins and who loses. And so, what I want you to do is to identify, this is what we're going to do for the rest of the week, our quick take-home lesson, which is, I want you to identify one or two people who might be considered your enemies. These might be your teachers, these might be people at school that you don't like, bullies. For some of y'all, it might be your parents. And so, I want you to ask yourself, why is it hard to act lovingly or respectful towards such people? It could be because they annoy you, because they're rude to you, because they don't treat you how you should be treated, how you believe you should be treated, stuff like that. And then, what practical steps can you take to serve as a channel of God's love to these people? And it could be, a nice word. It could be a smile. It could be, shoot them an email or a text message telling them, hey, I hope you're feeling all right, and I hope everything's going well for you right now. And so, in David was able to come to peace with Saul, because he realized that Saul was, eventually the fight between him and Saul would not be finished with a big battle between him and Saul. It would be finished with God. And so what we need to remember is that our battles will eventually, if we have a problem with the person, our battles will end up being fought through God, not through ourselves. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Lord, I just want to say thank you for letting us all be here today. I want to pray for everyone's health and for everyone's well-being. Lord, I just want us to all remember that it's hard to love our enemy, but our enemy, it's not up to us to cast judgment on our enemy. That's you. And knowing that can give us an immense amount of self-confidence and um, and help us to fix those relationships that could be damaged by having this person as our enemy. Lord, I just want to pray for everyone here. Please let them remember your words, and in your name we pray. Amen. All right, so next week we are going to continue on in David. It's going to be David as king, and when he's king, he has a lot of stuff happen to him that is very important to know about, because it helps you learn about his relationships and actually some of why he wrote the Psalms the way he did. And the Psalms are a very important part of the Bible. They're a huge amount of poetry and letters. And so that's what we'll start next week. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.